The IMAX theatre is back. The new screen is one of the biggest on Earth.
Crystal clear images and powerful digital sound.
Cutting-edge technology.
Laser projectors.
It is really the most technically difficult projection system out there.
The finest filmmakers in the world have a thing for IMAX.
I knew I wanted to create an absolute spectacle.
And none more than Chris Nolan.
You've been working with IMAX cameras for a long time. And people view you as a pioneer.
New large format film cameras.
There are only 30 cinemas around the world that can display true IMAX film format.
It's a very immersive presentation format.
IMAX, it's completely real, you know.
It weighs about 600 pounds. Interstellar is 49 reels.
And the film can cost $2,000 per minute to produce.
I went to IMAX and said, could we use your cameras? Could we actually start to shoot a major motion picture on IMAX cameras?
IMAX is one of the titans of the movie world. In 2023, the company boasted a revenue of $375 million and still dominates the conversation regarding the theater-going experience. IMAX technology is preferred by some of the most revered filmmakers in the world, and many cinephiles swear by their state-of-the-art imaging and sound systems. But I smell a conspiracy. Is IMAX worth the hype and the extra ticket money, or is the IMAX craze just another manifestation of the rampant consumerism we've gotten all too used to by now? In order to get to the bottom of this, I tried a new thing called imax-maxxing, which is where I hyperfixate on IMAX for a couple of weeks. I traveled hundreds of miles to see some of the best IMAX theaters, talked to an IMAX superfan, and ate at least 3 large popcorns by myself. Hey everyone, I'm joined by Caleb Reese-Paul, filmmaker behind numerous short films, including The Lake and the Sky.
It's experimental films set in the 70s about a kid who creates a machine that lets him relive his memories. And we're playing at an IMAX theater as part of the Sacktown Movie Buffs Film Festival at the Esquire IMAX in Sacramento next year, which is going to be really awesome.
Now might be a good time to mention that I love a good IMAX movie. I'm not paying for all that every time I want to see something, but on special occasions I enjoy it as much as the next guy. Prior to making this video though, I really was not much of an expert at all, which is why I wanted to dig deeper into the topic. Also, if you want to play a drinking game that's likely to result in alcohol poisoning, go ahead and take a shot every time I say IMAX in this video. To establish the basics of how modern IMAX functions and what makes it so great, we're gonna have to start in the past. Expo 67, Montreal, Canada, 1967. In one exhibit, a group of experimental filmmakers synced up 9 projectors in order to render a pristine image on a massive screen. But, as you might imagine, syncing up 9 projectors is kind of a pain in the ass, so they set out to find a better way. The first IMAX film, Tiger Child, was screened at Expo 70 in Osaka, Japan. Tiger Child was kind of a documentary, but mostly a technological showcase, a proof of concept for what IMAX could become. I wasn't able to find a version of this to watch online, but it's described as being filmed on locations around the world as a travelogue of the human spirit. The vibe I'm getting is very much Disney's Soarin' Around the World, but without the crippling fear of heights. It would take years before IMAX would make the transition into fiction filmmaking. Once they did, however, the movie-watching landscape would never be the same. You see, there's what they call true IMAX. This is shot on 70mm film, which is a lot bigger and better than traditional 35mm film, naturally. Part of the reason for this is that 70mm has its perforations, or holes, on the top rather than along the sides. That means that the film runs horizontally through the projector rather than vertically.
Normally, film runs vertically through a camera, and IMAX film runs horizontally. So they've basically stacked 2 slices of normal film and put them sideways. So you get like this almost square ratio. So normally you're looking at this, and with IMAX, it kind of gets expanded like this.
Each frame has a rough width of 70mm, which is made up of about 15 perforations. That's why you'll hear this referred to as 1570, 15 perf 70mm, and so on. This film has a native aspect ratio of 1.43 to 1. And it is gorgeous. Since it's not a digital medium, it's not made up of pixels the way video is, but it's estimated to have a resolution equivalent to about 18K.
And I think 40% of the IMAX experience is the pixels. picture, but like a lot of it is the sound as well. It's very loud. There's a whole different mix stage for IMAX films that's got like height in it, and the bass in IMAX theaters are their sound system are super famous for like having like 8 subwoofers or like insane feel to them. So you really feel like you're there.
I'm reminded of that one Martin Scorsese interview where he compared Marvel movies to theme park rides, which everyone seemed to interpret as an insult, but I actually think it's kind of a flattering comparison. A good theme park ride is immersive, telling an action-packed story that you get to be a part of. A good IMAX screening, like what I experienced when watching Interstellar, should have a lot of the same qualities. That's kind of the appeal, right? To have these visuals that suck you in and sound that makes the whole room rumble, that you forget you're even watching a movie. And of course, feature film stories are ideally more complex and emotionally driven than theme park ride storylines, but you see the point that I'm trying to make. But not that many movies are actually shot on IMAX film, to a point where it's kind of a big deal when one actually is. You might remember Christopher Nolan urging people to see Oppenheimer in 70mm last year. Only 30 theaters in the world were equipped with the projectors needed to screen the film in this format. But wait, there are hundreds of IMAX theaters out there. How come the vast majority of those couldn't screen the film in the correct format? I'd like to see them try to explain this one. Checkmate, IMAX. IMAX is revered as one of the best, if not the best, ways to watch movies, point blank, period. But not all IMAX is created equal. Some IMAXs simply IMAX harder than other IMAXs could ever dream of IMAXing. There are a deeply confusing number of IMAX shooting and screening formats, but let's go through the basics.
There's digital IMAX and there's IMAX film. So digital IMAX is shot on a digital camera, which is a large sensor, and you get pretty good resolutions, probably like 4K or something. But on the sound side, it's all the same. All that's the same. It's just the kind of capture format. And so with celluloid, you get like super rich colors, you get obviously insanely high resolution, and you get that full IMAX ratio. If you're going to one of the theaters that supports 70mm IMAX, you're actually watching a real print of 70mm projected in front of you, which is like such a feat of whatever IMAX black magic engineering they have going with, like it runs at like 160 miles per hour through the projector or something. It's, you know, it's insane.
Shot on IMAX refers to films shot on actual 70mm IMAX film stock, whereas filmed for IMAX refers to movies shot on IMAX approved digital cameras. And there is a big difference between the two. Movies shot on digital don't use film, obviously, and don't record in that full frame 1.43:1 aspect ratio. That means that these movies have to be letterboxed in order to fit the screen in an IMAX theater. But there's another catch. Not all IMAX theaters are true IMAX theaters. Some of them are referred to as LIMAX screens. It's kind of universally agreed upon that a big, correctly shaped screen and a film projector is the best case scenario, but some people are more willing than others to settle for digital projection if the screen is big enough, or to settle for a smaller screen as long as the format is 70mm. Everyone acknowledges the existence of LIMAX, but everyone's definition of an acceptably IMAX-y IMAX is a little different. These screens come in many shapes, sizes, and screening formats, so the dichotomy between IMAX and LIMAX isn't a dichotomy exactly.
To me, what defines the LIMAX is the ratio, because what makes IMAX to me is the aspect ratio. So you can go to a digital IMAX theater that's not a LIMAX. Most LIMAXs are in 190. So instead of like a normal height like this, you get like a little more, but it's really just a marketing thing to put up the ticket prices and make people go to your theater. And so, yes, you get the better sound system, which is pretty good. But to me, what a real IMAX is that full kind of square ratio. It's not to say that all IMAXs are terrible, because it can definitely be a good option if it's just like a bigger screen. So if a bigger screen is all you're looking for, totally great. But you're missing like 30% of additional picture on the top and bottom that you could get in a real IMAX for probably the same ticket price.
The largest IMAX screen in the world by surface area is technically a LIMAX. It's huge, but you'll notice that its shape isn't true to format. And the world's tallest IMAX theater, which is the largest in the correct IMAX aspect ratio, doesn't even have a 70mm film projector, meaning that everything you watch here will be projected digitally. If you're wondering whether your local screen is a true IMAX screen, you might have a hard time figuring it out. Theater chains and IMAX themselves don't seem keen on letting you know which theaters are which for obvious reasons. True IMAX and LIMAX are usually priced very, very similarly. If you know that you're not always getting the full product, you're not always going to pay the full price. And they want you to pay the full price. So that's where, in true corporate fashion, IMAX starts to get a tiny bit sketchy, even conspiratorial. They're not technically lying about these screens, but there's an element of deception here that clearly isn't an accident. Of course, there will always be the diehards who are very aware of the differences, but IMAX's business model relies on the assumption that the common casual movie viewer won't do too much research, which is correct in many cases. And why should they? They saw IMAX, they bought a ticket. Their only mistake was blindly trusting a corporation. I recommend the IMAX subreddit if you're ever in doubt. It's highly likely that there's already a thread in there discussing your local theater. Many filmmakers have voiced a preference for IMAX production and screening, but one man, above everyone else, seems to be the loudest voice sharing support for IMAX technology. That man, of course, is Christopher Nolan. I'm going to first state that Christopher Nolan is not my personal favorite filmmaker. I've really enjoyed some of his movies, while others didn't work for me as well as others, but I've never not liked a Christopher Nolan movie, like straight out. I think I have a fairly healthy respect for the qualities he brings to his filmmaking. Now, it's well known that Nolan loves IMAX, like a lot. In fact, his films and advocacy for IMAX have been crucial in the process of getting the company to where it is today, and he continues to swear by IMAX technology. But why? It's a valid question. As a director, IMAX poses a whole host of problems. The film is incredibly expensive and can't be projected in its true form in most theaters, and the cameras are gigantic and very, very loud, making on-set sound recording virtually impossible. It's worth noting that money is basically not an object if you're Christopher Nolan, nor is having to do some ADR. I think they have the money in the budget. I think the primary reason Christopher Nolan is so obsessed with using IMAX is simply because he loves how it looks. I'm not going to be cynical here. When he speaks about it in interviews, it's really clear that he takes great pride in being easily the most prominent filmmaker bringing IMAX to the masses. But I don't actually believe that that's the only thing. It's very likely that Christopher Nolan makes more money when an IMAX ticket is purchased than when a standard ticket is purchased. Even if that isn't the case, IMAX is a very helpful marketing tool for Christopher Nolan that makes him more money in the long run. It's associated with cinematic greatness and cutting-edge filmmaking technology, so who wouldn't want that name attached to their work? Conversely, this works out quite well for the IMAX Corporation. Christopher Nolan's movies are consistently very, very well received, meaning that IMAX too gets to attach its name to something with a positive reputation. The relationship between Nolan and IMAX is completely symbiotic, and profit margins are a factor. Nolan was reported to have made $100 million off of Oppenheimer alone. Obviously, this kind of thing is the nature of the entertainment industry, and there's nothing wrong with Nolan getting his money up. But it's important to look at things from a critical angle and consider the fact that Christopher Nolan's thing for IMAX is probably partially financial. And the same goes for every filmmaker who makes such a deliberate effort to associate themselves. Now, even if there's a case to be made for IMAX being a little bit of a cash grab, the end result is always undeniably spectacular. I would be remiss if I did this entire video without proper first-hand experience. I wanted to remind myself of the magic of IMAX, and the magic of Christopher Nolan's movies for that matter. So my girlfriend and I bought 2 tickets to the Interstellar re-release at the Mall of Georgia, only a 40-minute drive from where I live in the city of Buford, which is where my dog got his name. Everyone say hi to Buford. Having grown up so close to it, I've been to the Mall of Georgia IMAX countless times. All of my exposure to IMAX has really been through this theater. One of the most notable is definitely Oppenheimer. This was one of the only, I think, 17 theaters in the US that was showing it on the 70mm film. This is my home IMAX theater. Now, the Mall of Georgia doesn't have the largest or the tallest IMAX out there, but it is among the best, as it's one of the few that still has a 70mm film projector. The theater also has very comfortable seating laid out in a way that allows pretty much everyone in the theater to get a good view of the screen, so this is a 9 out of 10 theater experience overall. Unfortunately, unlike my experience seeing Oppenheimer here in 2023, the Interstellar re-release was a digital screening. Nevertheless, it looked amazing. I mean, it's still IMAX and it's still Interstellar. It looked good enough that I could have easily been convinced I was watching real film. That's when I began to wonder how exactly one would spot the difference, because I'm not confident that I would be able to.
If you've got 2 theaters side by side, right? One is digital and one is 70mm IMAX, same screen size, same 1:3 ratio. There will be a picture quality difference, but it's not ginormous because the only thing that you're changing is like color reproduction and resolution. On the film side, you'll probably be seeing some film grain, but it's a little misleading because if you're watching a digital version of that, it's a digital scan of the film print. So you'll probably see the same, basically the same grain on the digital version.
When researching IMAX's screens, I came across a very interesting piece of information. The world's largest IMAX screen is in Germany, but the world's tallest? I'll give you 1,000 guesses as to where this is located. Did you say Pooler, Georgia? If so, you would be miraculously correct, as Royal 14 Cinemas in Pooler boasts a 76-foot, 2-inch tall IMAX screen. Conveniently, a few days after learning this, I was making a holiday trip to visit my grandparents in Rincon, Georgia, located about 45 minutes from Pooler. In fact, I've been to this theater before. I think I saw the movie Wonder in IMAX in this theater, but don't quote me on that, I don't remember very well. So on the second day of my Christmas vacation, I made the drive to Pooler. Unfortunately, the only movie playing in IMAX during my visit was Mufasa: The Lion King, a prequel to a remake, which has to be a sign that something's not going well at Disney headquarters. As I pulled into the parking lot, the world's tallest IMAX loomed over the skyline. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. As you might be able to tell by looking at it, it's bigger than big. It's huge. This is perhaps the most American of sights. This is the Buc-ee's of movie theaters. This is the Bass Pro Shop pyramid of movie theaters. This movie theater is actually so big and so cool that it somehow has me feeling excited to watch The Lion King Mufasa. Alright, I'm late for my showtime by about 23 minutes now, so hopefully the previews will save me, but let's get going. I began the trek down the long-ass hallway towards the IMAX auditorium. Since I was late, I was the only one in the hallway other than a mother taking care of her crying baby outside of the Dolby Theater. What you're about to hear is the unedited audio of this hallway. So that creeped me out, but my mind was taken off of that by the visibly pixelated artwork of some of the greats in cinema history, including the man behind the IMAX masterpiece, Red One. Now let's talk about this theater, because I kind of have beef with it. For one, no 70mm film projector, which is a real bummer considering the potential of this big-ass screen. I was seated in row A, the very back row. If this is the screen and this is the stadium seating, row A is here. Where I was sitting, I had the perfect view looking at the screen head on. But to anyone below me, this is going to look like that one photo of Oppenheimer with the giant chin, not to mention how uncomfortable it's going to be to look at the screen with their head tilted up the entire time. I'm confident that if this theater sold out and every seat was filled, the vast majority of the audience would have a poor viewing experience. Part of the problem is how close to the screen the front row is, but the other issue is that these seats are very low. Now, at the Mall of Georgia, they fix both of these problems. The seats are a lot further away, and also start a good bit higher so that everybody has a more positive viewing experience. Like I said though, my seat had a great view. These seats were very comfy and even reclined, to which I have to award some bonus points. For these reasons, Pooler only gets a 7 out of 10 from me, but it's an 8.5 if you're in the back row, so sit in the back row if you go. But none of that matters, because my overall experience viewing this movie was like a 2 at best. That is the worst movie, I think, out of every single movie I saw in theaters in 2024, and I saw Mean Girls and Madam Web this year. What a bland corporate waste of my time and attention and money and eyeballs and ears. I hate to be that guy. And obviously there are still great movies coming out, but the ones that the biggest, most powerful corporations are pumping out and the ones that are making the most money are movies that do not care about you. They don't care about your enjoyment, they care that you buy a ticket. That is what is insulting about this. Anyway, I'm standing here trying to make a video about IMAX, and I can't, because my experience in that movie was so ass. And that's just really got me thinking about kind of the entire point of this video, which is that while spectacle can play a part in cinema and often does, cinema is a means of storytelling. And when that story doesn't land, it doesn't matter if you're watching it on the largest IMAX screen in the world, that movie still sucks regardless. The thing that decided whether or not I enjoyed a movie has never been the screen I watched it on. There were movies I watched in quarantine on my laptop in 2020 that changed my life, and as you've just seen, there are movies I've watched on some of the best screens in the world that I wish I could have my time and money back. As I watched the sun set over the world's tallest IMAX, I reflected on how cold, heartless, and corporate Mufasa was. I thought about how weird it is that Disney, which seems to have always been ahead of the curve making some of the most creative movies out there, is now so out of touch that they think we wanted this. But then I started to get weirdly hopeful. Filmmaking is an expensive art form. Throughout its history, it has been inaccessible to most people. This is still true today, but it's gotten better. I'm very privileged to have been born at a time and in a position where I have the chance to make completely independent films at 19 years old, but this wouldn't have been possible for me if I was born like 10 to 20 years sooner. The fact that independent filmmakers can now spend comparatively less money to tell more engaging stories than multi-million-dollar corporate entities is a good sign. On some level, the tides are shifting, and the power of storytelling is no longer exclusively in the hands of the ultra-rich, which is of course a good thing. By making this video, I was trying to make the point that screening formats are an overall insignificant factor in the movie viewing process, and that storytelling is where the real importance lies. The overemphasis on how movies are watched was the grand conspiracy that I was trying to uncover, but I stand somewhat corrected. I realize now that a high-quality screening format like IMAX is a great way to elevate an already enjoyable movie. I liked Interstellar when I watched it on my TV at home, but I loved Interstellar when I saw it in IMAX. On the flip side though, no screen of any size can save a boring movie. Mufasa. Unexpectedly, I'm walking out of this video a bigger fan of IMAX than I walked into this video, but with a healthy understanding that at the end of the day, they are just a company trying to sell a product. I hope I've conveyed the ways in which you can enjoy this kind of thing while still understanding that it isn't the point of watching movies, and that if you're a filmmaker, which my polls suggest nearly half of you are, your lack of access to expensive technology like this should never deter you from trying to tell stories. Who knows, maybe we'll be seeing your work on an IMAX screen one day. Thank you to Caleb Reese-Paul for joining me in today's video. Thank you to my only YouTube member so far, Amy Stewart. That's my grandma. If you want to become a member so that you can hang out with my grandma, you can click the link at the top of this video's description to learn a little bit more. If you join, you get access to bonus features from every video, including this video. The bonus features from today will include my full interview with Caleb and an extended cut of my rant about Mufasa, one of my least favorite movies of all time. Most importantly, thank you to all of you for watching and supporting this video. So this is the last video of an amazing year for Pictures Up. I remember back in October we started to kind of climb in subscribers after the Mr. Beastification video, and I was like, oh, we might hit 1,000 subscribers this year. And as of recording this, we are inching closer and closer to 5,000, which is just unbelievable. There are so many of you here, which makes me so nervous to give you content that you enjoy. Hopefully this is that. The last couple of videos have just done so well and been so fulfilling to make that this is the best I've ever felt about Pictures Up. This is the most clear that my direction as a channel has ever felt, you know? So I really just like what I'm doing right now and want to keep making content exactly like this for you to watch. So if you enjoyed this one, there's plenty more to come, so consider subscribing. If you're already subscribed and you already like this channel, consider becoming a member. But most importantly, just thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one next year. Until then, I'm Sam Morgan, and this is Pictures Up. I can't believe they were showing Interstellar here 2 days ago. I can't believe it.